It was a bitterly cold winter day in Paris, one of those days when snow covers everything in white, letting the cold air seep into the depths of the soul. The Champs-Élysées was almost empty. Most people were sheltering in warm cafes or behind their windows, but Francois walked slowly, as if escaping the cold of the world into his thoughts. He was going through hard times. Unemployment haunted him after the company he had worked for many years closed, and politics around him was boiling between those who supported the left and those who swung to the right. In the midst of that storm of thoughts and snow, he caught sight of a beautiful girl wearing a reddish-brown coat. She was walking lightly under the falling snow, her black hair flying around her face. His eyes met hers for a moment. It wasn't just a fleeting glance. It was a glance that carried everything, and everything. She stood still for a moment, exchanging glances with him before continuing to walk. Something inside him changed since that moment. Years passed, and Francois tried to forget that moment, but he couldn't. His friends got married, life changed around him, but he remained stuck in that look. Years later, he learned that her name was Marianne, and that she was a political activist, part of a youth movement against the regime that he also rejected. But the economic and political circumstances put them on different fronts, as if politics was the wall that separated them. Once again, almost 30 years after that first look, Francois was in a small cafe in Paris, sitting quietly in front of a window overlooking a narrow street. As he sipped his coffee, he saw Marianne sitting at the table opposite. She hadn't changed much, perhaps a few wrinkles around her eyes, but that look, the same look he had seen in the 80s, was still there. He gathered his courage and walked towards her. He sat next to her without saying a word for a few seconds. She looked at him in surprise before realizing who he was. "Francois?" she said in a surprised but warm voice. He smiled and said, 30 years ago, I saw you on the Champs-Élysées under the snow. I don't think I've gotten over that look since then." Marianne laughed lightly, but it wasn't a look without sadness. "Why didn't you say anything?" "Politics, unemployment, the economy, places, everything was against me. But you were always there in my head, in my heart. I couldn't forget you," he answered quietly. Marianne sighed and said, "Sometimes things get over us. We were young and we lived in a time when politics separated us. But feelings don't follow any ideology." They sat together talking about everything, about their lives, and how politics was a cruel game that separated them. In the end, there was no blame between them, just memories, and an old love that hadn't faded. That night, when they left the cafe together, the snow was falling again.